the head of housing. If you asked a stranger on campus to guess my age the week I moved into the University of Winchester, you'd get everything from middle schooler on a tour to lost page from a Dickens novel. I had the kind of face that made people ask whether I needed a permission slip to breathe. It was the great irony of my 18th year. I had finally entered the age of legality and looked like a child actor who'd been replaced. The first adult who did not treat me like a misplaced nephew was the new head of housing. Her name, printed in serif on her door, looked like a completed crossword. Karma L. She was, in that disarming way some people are, handsome. Mid-40s maybe, though her posture refused to admit it. Glossed hair in an impeccable bob, blazer that knew how to sit on a body, and a face that made you think she'd been born in good lighting. You could tell she had once been called pretty, and then, as the years collected, realized she was actually interesting, which is rarer and more expensive. When she smiled, it landed like a quiet secret. "Student assistant," she said, scanning me in a neat, appreciative sweep. "You look like you can fit behind furniture and rescue lost things." I liked that in a person. Her voice had a warmth I wanted to borrow. "Can you start today?" I said yes too fast, because yes is what you say when your mattress slopes like a ski jump, and your window frames a brick wall so intimate you feel you should exchange gifts. The job was posted on a corkboard between a defunct club for unicyclists and a flyer promising a roommate with a spiritual cat. Housing offered a modest wage, and the luxury I craved more than money: proximity to the person who decided what available meant. Karma's office looked like a wish list had enrolled in graduate school. Fiddle leaf fig, thriving indecently. Certificates in frames that did not apologize. A carafe of water so clear it made me think of moral choices. On her desk, a small crystal paperweight held down a stack of to-do lists written in a tidy hand. Even her clutter seemed curated. She wore a faintly citrus perfume that said, "I know where the keys are." "Office rule number 1, she said, gesturing me into the chair opposite her. "We solve boring problems beautifully. Rule 2, we do not wring our hands. We wring mops. Any questions?" "Only one," I said. "Do you have a better mop?" She laughed in a way that gave you credit for the joke. "We'll see what we can do." My tasks began simply. Print the welcome packets. Untangle email chains that had evolved into bleak literature, track lockouts in a spreadsheet and refrain from editorial comments like again, ? The back room, the annex where housing kept keys, labels, small emergencies, was my jurisdiction. It had a computer with a stubborn beige face and a label maker I respected more than some relatives. On Thursday, while I was taming the shelf of MISC into something that could pass as ASSORTED, I tapped the computer awake. The screen bloomed into a paused video. Nothing lurid, nothing illegal, just private in the way of a diary left open. A tastefully staged scene in warm, misleading light. The room on the screen was immaculate. The people were adults. The vibe was both theatrical and intimate, like walking past a window at dusk and catching a table set for a confession. I looked away, the way you look away from a person on a bus who is quietly crying and pretending not to be. I closed the browser, wiped the keyboard with a tissue as if it had overheard me, and renamed a file called Labels Final Final to Labels Final for Real. When the door opened, I nearly saluted. "Find anything?" Karma asked, setting a folder on the table. She stood close enough for me to smell that citrus and a calm that felt practiced. "Just dust," I said, which was accurate and unconvincing. She tilted her head, measuring the distance between my answer and the truth. It wasn't cruel, the way she watched. It was clinical, the appraisal of someone who writes recommendation letters that change lives. "I appreciate diligence," she said. "I also appreciate discretion. I can make your life at Winchester easier or..." a small shrug, elegant as a sentence diagram. Or not. Play the game with me, and I'll make sure you land on good squares. There are moments when you hear yourself agree before you've decided to. I nodded. Perhaps I believed I was agreeing to less paperwork. Perhaps I heard the word easier and mistook it for earned. The next morning, my room was different. I hadn't moved. I had been moved. The mattress had grown a conscience. The window now framed trees and light like a generous metaphor. There were 2 pillows and a lamp that responded to touch in a way that felt vaguely romantic. I went to breakfast and found an omelet with my name on it, metaphorically speaking, although the cook looked at me as if he would monogram the eggs if asked. Ease arrived with a manic punctuality. Doors unlocked themselves. Emails answered themselves. My campus card acquired privileges I had not known could be acquired. I told myself I had simply been noticed by the invisible mechanism of fairness. I told myself a number of things because I enjoyed the way the new air felt in my lungs. A week into my flattering life, an envelope slid under my door. Cream paper, my name in deliberate penmanship that made me want to sit up straighter. Come to my place, it said. I'll send a car. Be prepared for anything. There was a flourish where a signature might have been. I didn't need the signature. The driver did not speak. We climbed a hill to a neighborhood that suggested self-esteem. Not the richest street, those people live behind gates, but a confidence of hedges. Karma's house was not large. It was exact. Every angle had found its destiny. When she opened the door, the foyer smiled with her. Shoes, she said gently, with a glance at the Turkish rug. We leave the world at the threshold. If you'd asked me to describe the most attractive thing about her, I would have said it was the way she edited a room by entering it. The small adjustments of wrist and shoulder, the tailored laugh, the offered glass of water placed exactly where your hand would discover it. Her age suited her the way a final draft suits a good sentence. No guessing, only intention. She had a scar near her temple, pale as old thread, and it made you believe in chapters. She led me past tasteful art into a living room that smelled like citrus and new paper. We sat. She did not rush. You've been happy? She asked. The question was simple and somehow intimate. Yes, I said, which was true and therefore complicated. She nodded, pleased with me as if I were a book she'd recommended. There's more I can do, she said. There are always efficiencies we can find, but arrangements make the world move, and arrangements require clarity. She rose, as if the conversation required a different key, and guided me down a short hallway to a door. When she opened it, I understood without needing the whole story. A room set for a preference, a sanctuary for control. Not monstrous, not crude, curated, the strangeness of scale, the careful absence of cliché. It was not the content that caught in my throat. It was the precision, the certainty of a person who had arranged her world so her hunger had a place to sit. You are an adult, she said, her voice low enough to be mistaken for kind. You're allowed to leave. You're allowed to stay. But you're not allowed to pretend this is accidental. The most unglamorous truth about me is that my courage arrives late to its meetings. It comes jogging in after the decision is due, sweaty and apologetic, and says, "What did I miss?" I looked at the room. I looked at her. She was beautiful in that grown, unsentimental way. Immaculate collarbone, hair that kept its promises, a mouth that smiled from one side first. I thought about my flawless mattress and the way the dining hall cashier had started greeting me with, "Hey man," like we were comrades. I thought about the invisible ladder I had apparently begun to climb. I don't think I can, I said, and hated the sound of my own good sense. I mean, I won't. I'm sorry. There was a minute in which the house seemed to listen. Then she exhaled a small, amused breath. the kind you'd release upon discovering your favorite bakery had run out of your pastry, but offered a fine second choice. "You disappoint me," she said without cruelty, "not because you said no, because you needed a week to find the word." She closed the door, softly, the way people close doors when they own them. In the living room, she poured me water and handed me an envelope with a lightness that implied receipt. "You'll be moved back to your original room by tonight," she said, as if informing me that my package would arrive on Thursday. "Your hours remain as scheduled. We're professionals." I wanted to scream or apologize or make a speech about power and fairness and compromised mattresses. Instead, I said, "Thank you," because my mouth prioritizes politeness over any other form of self-preservation. The drive downhill took less time, as if gravity had strong opinions. My old room had never looked so honest. The brick wall reintroduced itself with relief. The mattress leaned into its familiar slant. I lay on it and felt, for the first time, the comfort of a thing that had not been paid for. Monday at the office, we did not mention the hill or the door or the way water tastes when someone attractive hands it to you. We were efficient. Karma moved through the day like a person who could file her feelings correctly. If anything, she was kinder in the sleek, administrative sense of the word. She corrected a sentence of mine with a pencil, and then sharpened the pencil, handing it back as if it had been to therapy. Students came and went. One of them, a new freshman, narrow as a violin, asked whether it was possible to switch rooms because his roommate performed motivational speeches to himself at dawn. "He calls it sunrise grind," the boy whispered, trembling. "He wants me to participate." "There's a process," I said, with the crispness of a person who had lately rediscovered policy. "Forms, committee, a bed swap waiting list." I smiled in the way I hoped appeared adult. "Meanwhile, we can lend you earplugs." Karma watched from her doorway, her expression composed and unreadable, like a line of poetry you suspected might be about you. She looked magnificent in a dark green dress that suggested both competence and seasonal awareness. When the freshman left clutching earplugs and hope, she stepped back into her office and sent me an email whose subject read simply, "Boundaries." Inside, "We discuss process changes. We do not invent them mid-flight." Then, after a beat, "Niece work with the student." I stared at the screen until the words softened around the edges. There are people whose approval tastes like sugar dissolved in hot tea, comforting but gone too soon. Hers stayed on the tongue. That week, I made an appointment with student support. I did not arrive with torches. I arrived with a careful story set at a safe distance. I said I had been offered an arrangement I had declined, and that I worried about the way favors can be invited into a room and then multiply. I did not name Karma because naming felt like vengeance, and I am more pedestrian than vengeful. The counselor thanked me, took notes, and poured water into a paper cup with the solemnity of ritual. I checked the box for confidential and walked home feeling both brave and ridiculous, which I have learned are cousins. Life returned to its less flattering rhythm. The dining hall remembered it had other beloveds. The glide through doors was replaced with the old push and hope. I discovered I minded less than I expected. There is an ease in not keeping track of what you owe. Once in a while, I'd see Karma on the quad, her hair a perfect argument, her laugh a soft metronome that made people straighten their spines. She was attractive in the exact way that made you angry at the adjective, poised, scented, the faintest smudge of eyeliner like a rumor. She had the posture of a person who had carried heavy things correctly and set them down carefully. When she looked in your direction, you felt temporarily included in a better plan. We coexisted inside the university like neighbors who share a wall and pretend not to hear. Sometimes she gave me assignments with a new, precise gentleness. Sometimes she copied another administrator, as if to remind both of us that the world had witnesses. Her power, which had once felt like a velvet rope, became an office supply, a stapler, useful, dependable, slightly dangerous if misapplied. Mid-semester, a sophomore named Ira came in with a request. Could he be moved because his ceiling groaned like a ship, and he dreamed of drowning? I think the building talks, he said pleasantly, and I don't speak building. Karma emerged in that quiet glide of hers and asked 2 or 3 questions that made Ira feel, I could tell, exquisitely seen. She had this gift. She made attention feel like a luxury brand. I watched him bask and recognized myself as a previous model. We'll try, she told him, with a smile that gave him a future to live for. After he left, she looked at me and said lightly, process, with just enough music in the word to suggest I was included in its choreography. Near the end of term, an envelope waited in my campus mailbox. Same elegant hand. Inside, a note on thick paper. You were right to know your answer. Some people are quick. Some people are late. Some never know. No signature, of course, but the sentence wore her perfume. Tucked behind it, absurdly, 2 unused meal vouchers. I laughed in the echo of the mailbox, a sound like a cough that learned manners. Finals arrived. The laundry room bloomed into damp sculpture. I worked 2 overnight shifts with the housing phone clipped to my belt, a talisman against panic. At 2 a.m., a student called because he had locked himself out while carrying a plant. It's a rubber plant, he said. I'm concerned it will forget me if I leave it in the hall. I'll be right there, I said, because emergencies are often about rubber plants. When I opened his door, he looked at me with the grateful awe of someone who has been allowed to continue a small, manageable life. On move-out day, I passed by the housing office with a box labeled Books and Other Lies and saw Karma standing in the doorway, speaking to a parent who had arrived with high expectations and a label maker of her own. Karma's smile made the parent calmer. Her hands made little sketches in the air that added up to reassurance. She caught my eye for a fraction of a second, and, in that microscopic interval, offered a nod that contained a dozen things. Thank you. We're fine. This happened. Keep walking. I did. That night, I lay on my slanted mattress and made a neat inventory of what I had and did not. I had a room that told the truth, friends who knew my real laugh, a job that kept me close to the hum of a place I was learning to love, and a spine that didn't click when I tried to stand up straight. I did not have a perfect pillow. I did not have access to the rooms on the hill where carpets forgave your shoes. In the fall, I'll take a job in the library, where the temptations come with barcodes. I'll still wave when I pass housing. I might still, occasionally, smell citrus in my dreams and arrange my thoughts into tidy stacks the way Karma arranged paper. I will probably never stop admiring the exactness with which she lived, or the way she wore 40-something like a bespoke suit. There is a scandal in our age about admitting we find power beautiful, but ignoring it never made anyone honest. If I were to write rules for myself, to tape inside a closet where I keep the shirts I'm not yet brave enough to wear, they would be brief. Ease that costs you the person you are will come due. Attractive is not a crime. What you do with it is the whole trial. You don't have to take the better mattress to sleep well. Sometimes, late, I imagine a version of the conversation on the hill in which I had said something smarter than I can't. In that version I say, you're beautiful, and I'm tempted, and also, no. In that version, she smiles with her eyes first and tells me I'm going to be fine because I already am. In real life, what happened is less cinematic and more useful. She gave me water. I gave her back the future she'd sketched for me. We both adjusted our posture and went to work. And if, every now and then, I pass a window at dusk and see a table set for a confession, I do not look away. I look carefully, and then I keep walking, because the most seductive thing about a door is not what's behind it, but the knowing you can choose not to open it and still get where you're going.
Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Mommy Sarah's Story Time. If you enjoyed the stories, please support the channel by liking and subscribing. Remember, my channel is not monetized, and I write most of the content myself. On occasions when I don't, it's sourced through emails from trusted contacts. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. If you're able to, consider making a donation to support our channel. Your support means a lot. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to sharing more stories with you.